The lawyer's words hit me like a slap across my weathered face. To my beloved daughter Sandra, I leave our family home and $33 million. I watched my daughter's eyes light up with greed while I sat there in my black funeral dress, still numb from burying Robert just 3 days ago. But then came the part that would change everything. To my dear wife Margaret, I leave a first-class plane ticket to Monaco, effective immediately. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. You should have seen Sandra's face when the lawyer read that line. Pure confusion mixed with barely concealed satisfaction. $33 million versus a plane ticket. In her mind, she'd clearly won the lottery while I'd been given what amounted to a consolation prize. "Is that it?" Sandra asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Just a plane ticket for Mom?" The lawyer, Mr. Henderson, adjusted his glasses nervously. He'd known our family for 20 years, helped Robert with all his business dealings. "That's what the will specifies, Mrs. Morrison. Your father was very particular about these arrangements." I sat there in stunned silence, my hands folded in my lap like the good wife I'd been for 43 years. Robert and I had built everything together. The construction company that made us wealthy, the investments, the beautiful house Sandra was now inheriting. We'd been partners in every sense of the word, or so I thought. Sandra leaned forward in her chair, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her designer purse. "When does this trip need to happen?" she asked, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. The sooner I left, the sooner she could take full possession of her inheritance. "The ticket is for tomorrow evening," Mr. Henderson replied. "Your father arranged for a car to pick up Mrs. Whitfield at 6 p.m. tomorrow." As if Robert knew I'd need to get away from everything quickly, as if he'd planned this whole thing down to the last detail. "Well," Sandra said, standing up and smoothing her black skirt, "I guess Mom's going on vacation." How nice for her. The venom in her voice was subtle, but unmistakable. To anyone else, she might have sounded supportive, but I knew my daughter. I'd raised her, loved her, sacrificed for her, and right then, I could see exactly what she thought of me. A burden, an inconvenience, someone who'd just become very, very disposable now that Daddy's money was all hers. The next morning, Sandra showed up at the house bright and early with a moving truck and a crew of workers. My house, the house where I'd made breakfast for 43 years, where I'd nursed Robert through his cancer, where I'd hosted every holiday dinner and birthday party for our family. "Mom, we need to talk," Sandra announced, walking into my kitchen like she owned it, which I suppose she did now. "I've been thinking about your situation, and I really think this Monaco trip came at the perfect time." I was still in my bathrobe, sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee and trying to process everything that had happened. "My situation?" I asked, though something cold was already settling in my stomach. "Well, you can't stay here," she said matter-of-factly, opening cabinet doors and examining the contents like she was taking inventory. "Brad and I have been planning to renovate this place for months, tear down some walls, update everything. It's going to be a construction zone." Brad, her husband, appeared in the doorway with a tablet in his hands. "We've already got the contractors scheduled," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Demo starts Monday." "Demo?" I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "You're tearing down parts of this house?" "Daddy left it to me, Mom," Sandra said with exaggerated patience, like she was explaining something to a slow child. "I can do whatever I want with it. And honestly, this place is so dated. Those wallpapers you picked out in the 80s? They have to go." I watched her run her finger along the windowsill, where I'd placed a small vase of roses from Robert's funeral. Roses he'd specifically requested because they were my favorite. She picked up the vase and set it on the counter with casual indifference. "But this is my home," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where am I supposed to live when I come back from Monaco?" Sandra and Brad exchanged a look that made my blood run cold. "Well," Sandra said slowly, "we were hoping you might extend your trip, maybe find somewhere else to settle down. You know, start fresh." The meaning hit me like a physical blow. They didn't want me to come back. Ever. "You're throwing me out," I said, stating the obvious because I needed to hear it out loud. Needed to confirm that my own daughter was actually doing this to me. "We're encouraging you to embrace new opportunities," Brad said in his corporate speak. Always the diplomatic one, that Brad. "You're only 67, Margaret, You've got a lot of life left to live. Just not here. Not in the home I'd built. Not near the family I'd devoted my life to. Not where I might be an inconvenience to their grand renovation plans. The plane ticket turned out to be first class on Air France, and despite everything happening, I had to admit Robert had spared no expense. The seat was more comfortable than my living room chair, and the flight attendant kept refilling my wine glass without being asked. Small mercies. I spent most of the flight staring out the window and trying not to think about Sandra's final words to me. "Don't worry about the house keys, Mom. We'll change the locks anyway for security," said with such casual cruelty that it took my breath away. But here's the thing about being married to a successful businessman for over 4 decades. You learn to read between the lines. You develop instincts about when something doesn't add up. And nothing about Robert's will made sense. My husband had never been impulsive. Every decision was calculated, researched, planned down to the smallest detail. The man who spent 3 months choosing the right contractor for our kitchen renovation wouldn't just randomly leave me a plane ticket to Monaco without a very specific reason. The flight landed in Nice, and a driver was waiting with a sign that read Mrs. Margaret Whitfield. He was polite but didn't speak much English, just helped me with my luggage and drove me along the most beautiful coastline I'd ever seen. The Mediterranean stretched out endlessly blue, dotted with white sailboats that looked like toys from this distance. We drove through Monaco proper, past the famous casino I'd seen in movies, past luxury shops that probably cost more than most people's cars. Finally, we pulled up to a hotel that looked like something from a fairy tale, the Hotel Royal Monaco, with its Belle Epoque architecture and gardens that belonged in magazines. "Mrs. Whitfield," the concierge said in perfect English. "We've been expecting you. Prince Alexandre asked me to give you this." He handed me an envelope with my name written in elegant script. Prince Alexandre? I stood there in the marble lobby with crystal chandeliers sparkling overhead, wondering if I'd fallen into some kind of bizarre dream. What did a prince want with me? I waited until I was alone in my suite, which was bigger than Sandra's entire first apartment, before opening the envelope. The note inside was brief but intriguing. "Mrs. Whitfield, I was your husband's business partner and the executor of his true estate. Would you join me for dinner tonight at 8? There are things about Robert's will that you need to understand. The car will collect you at 7:30. Business partner?" Robert had never mentioned any business partners in Monaco, certainly not royal ones. But then again, there seemed to be a lot Robert hadn't mentioned. Prince Alexandre Dubois turned out to be a man in his mid-40s with the kind of refined elegance that only comes from generations of good breeding. Tall, silver at the temples, impeccably dressed, and with eyes that seemed to see right through all the polite pretenses people usually hide behind. He'd arranged dinner at a private club overlooking the harbor, where massive yachts bobbed in the water like floating mansions. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said, rising to greet me. "Thank you for coming. I knew your husband well, and I've been looking forward to finally meeting you." "Please call me Margaret," I said, settling into the chair he held for me. "Though I have to admit, I'm completely confused about why I'm here." Alexandra smiled, and something in his expression reminded me of Robert, when he was planning one of his elaborate surprises. "Your husband was a brilliant man, Margaret, brilliant and very strategic in his thinking. Tell me, how would you describe your relationship with your daughter?" The question caught me off guard. "Sandra? Well, she's—" I paused, thinking about everything that had happened in the last few days. The moving truck, the casual dismissal, the changed locks. "Complicated." "Complicated," Alexandra repeated, nodding thoughtfully. "Robert said you might say that. He worried about Sandra, about the kind of person she was becoming. All that money, he said, but no character to match it." A server appeared with wine, something French, and probably more expensive than my monthly grocery budget used to be. Alexandre waited until we were alone again before continuing. "Your husband and I became partners about 5 years ago," he explained. "He was expanding into European markets, and I had connections he needed. But our partnership became much more than business. We became friends, confidants. He never mentioned you," I said, and immediately felt foolish for admitting it. "He wanted to protect you from certain knowledge about some of Sandra's behavior that he'd discovered, the way she talked about your future, about inheritance, about what would happen when you became inconvenient to her plans. My wine glass stopped halfway to my lips. What kind of behavior? Alexandra's expression grew serious. Robert hired a private investigator 2 years ago. He'd noticed some troubling patterns in Sandra's attitude toward family money. Toward you specifically. Phone calls she thought he couldn't hear. Conversations with her husband about moving you to a nursing home the moment he died. The words hit me like ice water. A nursing home? Against your will, if necessary. They'd researched facilities, Margaret. Made inquiries about involuntary commitment procedures for elderly relatives. Your daughter was planning to have you declared incompetent and take control of everything. I set my wine glass down with shaking hands. But the will you heard yesterday, Alexandra said gently, was a test. A test? I repeated, my voice barely steady. What kind of test? Alexandra leaned forward, his expression both serious and compassionate. Robert knew what Sandra was planning. He wanted to see if she'd show any love, any care for you when she thought she'd inherited everything and you'd been left with almost nothing. He wanted to know if there was any decency left in her. The implications began to sink in. She failed, didn't she? Spectacularly. According to the reports I've been receiving, yes. She had you evicted from your own home less than 24 hours after the funeral. Changed the locks, started renovation that will destroy everything you built together, told you not to come back. Alexandra's voice carried quiet outrage. Even Robert, who'd seen evidence of her callousness, didn't think she'd move that quickly. I thought about Sandra's face when she heard about my plane ticket. The barely concealed glee, the immediate planning to get me out of the house. So the $33 million the house? Real enough. That inheritance stands as written in the public will, but it represents only a fraction of your husband's actual wealth. Alexandra signaled the server, who brought a leather portfolio to our table. The real estate holdings, the offshore accounts, the business interests, those were never meant for Sandra. He opened the portfolio and spread documents across the table. Properties in Monaco, Switzerland, Barbados. Investment accounts with numbers that made my head spin. Business holdings I'd never heard of, but that generated millions in annual income. Robert's true net worth, Alexandra said quietly, is approximately $147 million, not including this. He pulled out a final document, the deed to a villa in Monaco, with my name listed as the sole owner. I stared at the papers until the numbers blurred together. I don't understand. Why hide all this? Why put me through the humiliation? Because he loved you too much to let Sandra destroy you gradually. This was the quick, clean way to show you exactly who your daughter really is, and to ensure you'd have everything you need to live independently, with dignity, for the rest of your life. Alexandra poured more wine and let me process this revelation. Outside the window, Monaco sparkled with lights reflected on dark water. It was beautiful and strange and completely overwhelming. There's one more thing, Alexandra said gently. A decision Robert left for you to make. What decision? Whether Sandra deserves to know about any of this, whether she gets to keep her $33 million, or whether her behavior in the last few days has proven she deserves nothing at all. I looked at him sharply. Nothing. Robert wrote 2 final wills, Margaret. One that gives Sandra what she's already inherited, and one that gives her exactly what she gave you. Alexandra's smile was cold as winter moonlight. A plane ticket, one way, to a destination of your choosing. I spent that night in my luxury suite, wide awake and staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything Alexandra had told me. Robert had orchestrated all of this. The test, the humiliation, even my current location overlooking the Mediterranean. But I kept coming back to one horrible realization. Sandra had shown me exactly who she was, and I'd been too blind or too hopeful to see it clearly until now. The next morning, Alexandra picked me up for what he called a tour of your new life. First stop was the villa Robert had purchased for me. It sat on a cliff overlooking Monaco harbor, 3 bedrooms, a garden terrace, and views that belonged on postcards. He bought this 2 years ago, Alexandra explained as we walked through rooms filled with sunshine and possibility. Had it furnished according to your preferences. He said you'd always loved French provincial style and windows that let in natural light. It was perfect. Every detail showed Robert's careful attention to what made me happy. The kitchen had the same layout as our home in Connecticut, but with better appliances and a view of the sea. The master bedroom had a reading nook by the window, just like I'd always wanted. "There's more," Alexandra said, leading me to a study overlooking the garden. On the desk was a sealed envelope with my name in Robert's handwriting. "He wanted you to read this after seeing everything else." My hands shook as I opened it. Robert's familiar script filled 2 pages of his personal letterhead. "My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then Sandra has shown her true colors, and you know the truth about our daughter's character. I'm sorry you had to learn it this way, but I couldn't bear to watch her slowly destroy you while I was dying. You gave our family everything. Your love, your devotion, your incredible strength. You deserved so much better than what Sandra was planning for you. This villa, this money, this new life, it's not compensation. It's what you earned through 43 years of being the best wife, mother, and woman I've ever known. As for Sandra, the choice is yours. You can let her keep what she has and simply disappear from her life forever. Or you can show her that actions have consequences, that treating your mother like garbage might cost more than she ever imagined. I trust your judgment completely. Whatever you decide, know that I love you, and I'm sorry I won't be there to see you finally get everything you deserve. Forever yours, Robert." Alexandra was watching my face carefully when I finished reading. "He gave you all the power, Margaret. Sandra thinks she won the lottery, but you hold all the cards." I folded the letter and looked out at the sparkling water where expensive yachts drifted like dreams. My daughter had evicted me from my own home, changed the locks, told me never to come back, all while thinking she'd inherited everything and I'd gotten nothing. But now I knew the truth. Sandra had gotten the crumbs, and I'd inherited the feast. More importantly, I had the power to decide whether she deserved even those crumbs. "What would happen?" I asked slowly. "If I chose the second will?" "The second will," Alexandra said, pulling another document from his portfolio, "would revoke everything Sandra inherited. The house, the money, all of it would revert to you. She'd receive exactly what she gave you, a one-way plane ticket and nothing else." I traced my finger along the edge of Robert's letter, thinking about Sandra's smug face when she heard about my pathetic inheritance. How long do I have to decide? "As long as you need. But Margaret, there's something else you should know." Alexandra's expression grew more serious. "Robert set up surveillance of the house after his death. He wanted documentation of how Sandra treated you, in case legal proceedings became necessary." "Surveillance?" "Hidden cameras in the main living areas. Everything Sandra and Brad have done since the funeral has been recorded." He pulled out a tablet and showed me a video feed. "Would you like to see how they've been talking about you?" Part of me wanted to say no, to preserve whatever illusions I had left about my daughter. But I'd come this far into the truth. "Show me." The video was from yesterday afternoon, just hours after I'd left for the airport. Sandra and Brad were in my living room, their living room now, drinking champagne and celebrating. "Can you believe she actually fell for it?" Sandra's voice was crystal clear through the speakers. "Poor Mom. Thinks Daddy left her a consolation prize vacation." Brad laughed, raising his glass. "Best 33 million we never had to work for. Think she'll try to come back? God, I hope not. Did you see her face when I told her not to come back? Like a kicked dog." Sandra giggled, actually giggled, at my humiliation. "She'll probably end up in some cheap hotel in Monaco for a week, then crawl back here begging." "What if she does come back?" Brad asked. "Then we stick to the plan. Nursing home, incompetency hearing, the whole thing. She's old, she's emotional, she just lost her husband. Won't be hard to convince a judge she can't take care of herself." I watched my daughter toast my anticipated misery while sitting in the chair where I'd nursed Robert through his final weeks. The casual cruelty was breathtaking, but what hurt more was the complete absence of any love or gratitude in her voice. Alexandra turned off the tablet. "I'm sorry you had to see that." "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I needed to see it. I needed to know for certain." I looked out at the Mediterranean, where the setting sun painted everything gold. "How quickly can the second will be implemented?" 24 hours. "But Margaret, are you certain? Once this is done, there's no going back." I thought about 43 years of being a devoted mother, of sacrificing my own dreams to support Sandra's education, her wedding, her lifestyle, of babysitting her children while she built her career, of being treated like an ATM and a convenience, never a person worthy of love or respect. I'm certain. The next morning, I woke up in my Monaco villa as the legal owner of $147 million. Alexandra had worked through the night with lawyers in both Monaco and Connecticut, implementing Robert's second will with surgical precision. By 8 a.m. Monaco time, Sandra would be receiving a very interesting phone call from Mr. Henderson. I was having coffee on my terrace when my phone rang. Sandra's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Mom?" Sandra's voice was strange, tight with panic. "Mom, where are you? Something's wrong. Something's very wrong." "I'm in Monaco, dear. Just like you wanted. Mr. Henderson just called. He said there's been a mistake with Daddy's will. That there was a second will, and now everything's being revoked. The house, the money, everything. He said it's all going to you instead." I sipped my coffee and watched a yacht drift past my garden. "How interesting." "Mom, you have to fix this. You have to tell them it's a mistake. They're saying I have to vacate the house by tomorrow. That all the accounts are being frozen. This can't be right." "Why can't it be right, Sandra?" Because Daddy left everything to me. You just got a stupid plane ticket." I almost laughed at the outrage in her voice. Yes, that plane ticket really was quite something, wasn't it? First class to Monaco, where your father arranged for me to learn some very interesting things about his real estate holdings. Silence stretched between us. I could practically hear Sandra's mind racing, trying to understand what had happened. "What real estate holdings?" she asked finally. "Well, there's this lovely villa I'm sitting in right now. 3 bedrooms, ocean views, worth about $12 million. And then there are the properties in Switzerland, Barbados, the Cayman Islands." I let my voice trail off casually. "Mom, what are you saying?" "I'm saying your father was much cleverer than either of us realized. The will you heard wasn't his real will, Sandra. It was a test to see if you'd show any love or decency toward your mother when you thought you'd inherited everything and I'd gotten nothing." Another long silence. "And how do you think you did on that test, dear?" "Mom, listen to me." Sandra's voice had shifted into the fake sweet tone she used when she wanted something. "If there was some kind of misunderstanding, we can fix this. We're family. We take care of each other." I almost choked on my coffee. Take care of each other? Is that what you call having me evicted from my own home? Changing the locks? Telling me never to come back? I never said that. Sandra, stop. Just stop. I set my coffee cup down with more force than necessary. "There are recordings, cameras your father had installed. I've seen the videos of you and Brad celebrating my humiliation, planning to have me declared incompetent and locked away in a nursing home." Dead silence. "I heard you laugh about my reaction when you told me not to come back. I heard you call me a kick dog. I heard you toast to getting $33 million you never had to work for." "Mom, please." Sandra's voice was breaking now, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine emotion or calculated manipulation. I was upset. People say things they don't mean when they're grieving. "Were you grieving, Sandra? Because what I saw looked more like a celebration." Where does this leave us?" she asked in a small voice. I looked out at the Mediterranean, thinking about Robert's letter, about the 43 years I'd devoted to being the mother Sandra apparently didn't want. "I don't know. That depends on you." "What do you mean?" "Your father's second will gives you a choice. You can take responsibility for how you've treated me, really take responsibility, and we might find a way forward. Or you can keep pretending you did nothing wrong, and you can enjoy the same inheritance you thought I deserved." "Which is what? A plane ticket?" "Sandra, one way, to wherever you'd like to start over with nothing, just like you expected me to do." The phone went quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was different, smaller. "What kind of responsibility?" "Full admission of what you planned, apology to me, in writing, acknowledging exactly how you treated me and why it was wrong. Return of all my personal possessions you kept when you evicted me. And," I paused, surprised by what I was about to say next, "and you need to understand that if you choose to do this, it's not about getting your inheritance back. The money, the house, that's all mine now. This is about whether we can salvage any kind of relationship worth having. But if I do this, if I apologize and take responsibility, what do I get? And there it was. Still thinking about what she could get from me. Still seeing our relationship as a transaction. That's the wrong question, Sandra. If you don't understand why, then you've already made your choice. 3 days passed without a word from Sandra. I spent the time settling into my new life, exploring Monaco, and meeting with Alexandra about managing Robert's business interests. It was strange how quickly I adapted to having more money than I'd ever dreamed of. But perhaps 43 years of careful budgeting had prepared me to be equally careful with millions. On Thursday morning, Alexandra arrived at my villa with news. "Sandra's hired a lawyer," he said, settling into a chair on my terrace. "She's contesting the will." On what grounds? Undue influence, mental incapacity, fraud. The usual claims when someone loses an inheritance they thought was guaranteed. Alexandra's expression was grim. She's claiming Robert wasn't mentally competent when he wrote the second will, and that I somehow manipulated him. I felt a familiar anger rising in my chest. Even now, she can't just accept responsibility for her actions. There's more. She's frozen all the renovations on the Connecticut house and put it on the market. If she can't live there, apparently she's determined to make sure you can't either. That stung more than I expected. That house held 43 years of memories. Robert and I had built it into our dream home, room by room, year by year. Sandra was willing to destroy that just to spite me. But here's what she doesn't know, Alexandra continued, his expression brightening. Robert anticipated this possibility. He prepared for it. How? Alexandra pulled out another envelope. One final video message, to be played only if Sandra chose litigation over accountability. He recorded it 6 months before he died, when he was clearly of sound mind and health. We set up the laptop in my living room. Robert's familiar face appeared on screen, sitting in his study back home. He looked tired but determined, and seeing him again made my chest ache with fresh grief. "If Sandra is watching this," Robert's recorded voice said, "then she's chosen to contest my will rather than take responsibility for her actions. Margaret, I'm sorry you have to go through this, but I want you to know I planned for it." The video cut to a series of hidden camera recordings. Sandra and Brad in Robert's hospital room during his final weeks, talking about inheritance while they thought he was sleeping. Sandra on the phone with nursing homes, asking about involuntary commitment procedures. Sandra meeting with lawyers about financial guardianship while Robert was still alive. "I was awake for all of this," Robert's voice continued over the footage. "I heard every word, every plan she made to control you, to take everything from you, to warehouse you somewhere convenient while she spent money she didn't earn." The video showed more. Sandra going through Robert's papers while he was at chemotherapy appointments. Sandra copying financial documents. Sandra researching how to have elderly relatives declared incompetent. She was planning your imprisonment, Margaret, while I was dying, her own mother. And she never once asked how you were coping, never offered comfort, never showed an ounce of genuine grief for what our family was losing. The screen went black for a moment. Then Robert appeared again, leaning forward with intensity. "Sandra, if you're watching this, you have one last chance. Drop the lawsuit. Accept that your actions have consequences. Try to become the daughter your mother deserves, or lose everything permanently, because I have one final surprise prepared." The video ended with Robert holding up a document. "The Monaco Trust is irrevocable and untouchable by U.S. courts. But this house, the one you're fighting for, I've arranged for it to be donated to charity if you contest the will. Win or lose your lawsuit, Sandra, you'll never own this house. Margaret will decide whether it becomes a home for abandoned animals or gets torn down completely." I stared at the blank screen, amazed by Robert's thoroughness, even in death. "When does she find out about this?" I asked. "Her lawyer received a copy this morning," Alexandra said, "along with notice that the house donation becomes final in 72 hours, unless she withdraws all legal challenges." Sandra called me that afternoon, sobbing, "Mom, please, I'll do whatever you want. I'll apologize, I'll take responsibility, just please don't let them give away the house." Her voice was raw with desperation. "That's my children's inheritance. That's their history." I thought about her children, my grandchildren, who barely knew me because Sandra had gradually pushed me out of their lives. When did you start caring about their inheritance, Sandra? When you were planning to have me locked away so you could control mine? I never meant for it to go that far. I was scared, okay? Scared of taking care of an elderly parent, scared of the responsibility. Everyone talks about how hard it gets when your parents age, and I panicked. So you decided to have me declared incompetent while your father was still alive, while I was caring for him through cancer. Yes, the word came out like a sob. Yes, and I know how horrible that sounds. I know what I became, and I hate myself for it. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, Sandra sounded genuinely remorseful. Not calculating, not manipulative, just broken. The lawsuit, I said. Drop it completely. Today. Done. I'll call my lawyer right now. And I want a full confession, written, signed, detailing everything you planned and why. Not for legal purposes, Sandra. For truth purposes. I'll write it tonight. I stood on my terrace, looking out at the water where expensive yachts caught the afternoon sun. And I want you to understand that this doesn't fix everything. It doesn't erase what you did or what you showed me about who you really are. I know. But it's a start. It's the first honest thing you've said to me in years. Sandra was quiet for a long moment. Mom, what happens now? With us? I thought about Robert's letter, about the test he'd designed to show me the truth about our daughter. Sandra had failed that test spectacularly, but she was also, finally, facing the consequences of her choices. Now we see if you can learn to be the person your father and I raised you to be, instead of the person you chose to become. I paused, watching a seagull circle my garden. The house stays in the family, Sandra. Your children's inheritance is safe, but you and I are starting over from nothing. No assumptions, no obligations, no taking anything for granted. Can you ever forgive me? I closed my eyes, feeling the Mediterranean breeze on my face. Ask me in a year, Sandra, after you've shown me who you really want to be. 3 months later, I'm still in Monaco, still getting used to a life where I make every decision for myself. Sandra writes me letters now, real letters, not texts or emails. She's in therapy, working on understanding why she became someone who could plan to warehouse her own mother. Brad moved out last month, apparently unable to handle a wife who was taking actual responsibility for her actions. The house in Connecticut remains ours, maintained by a caretaker until we decide what to do with it. Maybe Sandra will earn the right to live there again someday. Maybe I'll return there myself. Or maybe I'll stay here in Monaco, where I've discovered I'm quite good at managing business investments and even better at living life on my own terms. Robert's test revealed the truth about our daughter, but it also revealed something about me. That I'm stronger than I knew, more resilient than I believed, and worthy of so much more than I'd been accepting. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.